Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. So a little bit of an impromptu video. This wasn't planned at all. I've got a lot of stuff planned in 6.5 Creedmoor, 270 Winchester, 30 TC, all kinds of stuff. But this was not necessarily in the plan. However, I had a buddy of mine go to church with. He reached out to me earlier today and he was like, hey, I am having issues getting my hunting rifle zeroed. I can get it on paper. For some reason, I cannot get it zeroed. And so he was like, hey, can you just take a look at it? Be happy to. I was like, bring the gun, bring the ammo. This is a buddy. I haven't done any work for this guy previously. So this is just all brand new stuff to me. And he just dropped it off. This is a Savage Model 11 chambered in 308. And you know, he had to run. I had some other stuff going on, so I just kind of asked him some quick questions. I was like, all right, so what seems to be the issue? You can get it on paper, but you can't get it zeroed. He was like, yeah. And I said, well, did you just run out of elevation on the scope and adjustability, you know, in terms of windage and all that? And he was like, no, I just can't. He said, I don't know what's going on. I can't get it zeroed. And then I ran out of the ammo that I was shooting, you know, at that range session. And I did tell him to bring some with him. But this is not the stuff he was shooting. So this is just other stuff that he had. Some Hornady 168 grain AMAX, right? The Hornady black stuff. He did say the other stuff was Hornady ammo, but he couldn't remember exactly what it was, that's neither here nor there. I'm gonna work up a load, so it doesn't matter. But I just wanna kind of walk you guys through what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I subscribe to the thought process that Eric Cortina has, you know, and when he breaks it down, it makes a lot of sense, right? Everything is broken until you fix it or it's not, right? So you basically get something like this. So what I did with this was I tore everything apart, right? Took the scope off, the rings off. I did go and check the bases and they're torqued perfectly, no issues there. So I didn't mess with them. But I pulled everything apart, pulled the stock, you know, barreled action out of the stock, checked everything. Did notice several things just as I was doing that. The screws for the scope rings, those were pretty loose. Those were not torqued down even to 18 inch-pounds, which is a lot of scope manufacturers. That's what they recommend on your scope rings, 18 inch-pounds. They were not torqued to that. They were looser than that. So probably contributing to why he couldn't zero the rifle. That wasn't the only thing that I found. Also found his bases were actually put on two different ways, right? So if you'll notice, this may be hard to see, this top one is correct in its orientation of the piece that actually you screw down. This one was flipped upside down. This was on the back, this was on the rear scope mount. This one was flipped upside down. So that could also be contributing to issues with just the scope itself and alignment and undue pressure on the scope because of how it's not gonna mount properly now, and you could be canted or something like that, right? Where it's gonna create an issue when you go to mount the scope itself. Not saying you can't get it zeroed and hunt like that, because that's how he's been doing it this whole time, and he's had no issues. But we're gonna get that addressed. I'm gonna get that situated, get that fixed. I also noticed his front action screw was pretty loose. The rear action screw seemed to be torqued properly, but his front action screw was not. So gonna take care of that. Already did take care of that, but notice that when I was disassembling everything. And then also while I was in there, this is the like I said, Savage Model 11 in 308. It has the AccuTrigger. So I tested the trigger pull with my Lyman gauge, and it was pulling average 4.5 pounds. So I went ahead, dropped it down to 3.5. Just made everything feel much smoother when I went to test the trigger. So let's see, after I did that, got it down to 3.5 pounds, put everything back together, torqued everything in terms of the action screws, got everything squared away there. Now, I did clean everything, wiped everything down. While I was in there, I used some of this stuff, Lucas CLP, just wipe everything down in terms of the barreled action itself. And then I just got done scrubbing the barrel. Nothing too crazy, nothing too serious. You can see I ran several wet patches through it, a few dry patches through it, and then I ran a dry, where's that? A dry bore mop down it. So, and I'm a big fan of this stuff. This is the Pro Shot. I also have Vortec. I have some Vortec stuff, but I'm a huge fan of the Pro Shot. This is their stainless steel cleaning rod. Huge fan of that. Pro Shot patches, and then the Vortec. I use their Vortec Eliminator. And now I got it scrubbed, good to go. I'm going to get the scope mounted up. I'll get the bases put back on. I'll get the scope mounted, and then I'll grab my Wheeler scope mounting kit, get everything level. When I did pick it up and look through it the first time, I could tell the scope wasn't, the reticle was not exactly level. And so we're gonna take care of that, get that squared away. After that, I will fast and furious load development mode will be engaged, because he was like, hey, today's Tuesday. He's like, hey, I'd like to hunt with this thing this weekend. And I'm like, okay. So I'm gonna try to put together a load, something that I think will work very well, provide good enough accuracy, and he can hit the deer woods and go kill something. So let me get the scope mounted up and then work on the load. So y'all hang tight. All right, guys, so the super expedited and abbreviated load development, I don't even want to call it that, because it wasn't actually like full-blown load development. But, you know, my buddy Tyler, in a pinch, hey, I want to go hunting this weekend, cannot get my gun zeroed, I'm having massive issues, drops it off. I'll walk you through the problems that I found, got everything squared away. I was able to get him all situated on getting the rifle put back together. I adjusted his trigger pull for him, so now it's 3.5 pounds instead of 4.5 pounds, which just feels a lot better when you're shooting at the bench. And so got that situated. I got the action screws torqued down properly. I got the scope bases, or the scope rings themselves, mounted to the bases properly, instead of having one where it goes to mount, where you had one sort of flipped, that was causing some issues, could potentially cause some issues. So I got that resolved, got the scope rings tightened down, torqued down properly, all squared away, right? Got the scope, got it level, at least got the scope level with the barrel, right? The action, got everything set up that way. And bore sighted, went out to the range yesterday and shot the loads that I had, the little sort of 15, I think it was like 15. It was 5 3-shot groups that I loaded up using these guys, the Sierra, the 165 grain Game King with IMR 4064. This stuff is the Alpha Munitions brass that I just had laying around. I went with this just because it was already tumbled and cleaned. I just had it sitting off over here to the side. It was already clean, so all I had to do was resize it, you know, chamfer, deburr, clean primer pockets, all that stuff, just normal brass prep, and then primer, and I was ready for powder. So this was like the path of least resistance. Even though typically I don't just use like ultra premium, you know, brass for other people. And generally that's the stuff that I would use this for my own load development, and then I would use something like Starline, or which is by no means a knock on them because they're great, and as you can tell, I use a lot of it. But generally, I wouldn't go out and buy Alpha Munitions brass just to give to somebody else, right? So this stuff's like $1 a piece. But that's neither here nor there because that's what I had available. So that's what I'm using. And I went out and shot. I had some Winchester stuff loaded up some Winchester brass in 308 that was actually all the way prepped and primed. Had it in the house. I found it. I don't even know where it came from. But I loaded up a 42.5 grain charge of IMR 4064. That's where I started. I loaded up that charge in the Winchester brass and shot it. And it shot that 3-shot group there. Not bad at all. The problem was the velocity wasn't that great. And then down here, this is where we start the Alpha munition stuff. So I went from 42.5 up to 42.8. So that's not great, but point of impact is still, you can see, pretty consistent through here. Don't worry about these. So when I went to shoot this at the range after I had bore sighted it, and all I did, took the bolt out, had the gun sitting on the bench, and had it sitting on the bench. I looked through the scope, looked through the barrel with the bolt out, lined it up best I could at 100 yards. And he had given me a box of factory ammo. So I shot once, that's where it hit. So that was my point of aim, that was the point of impact. So really close there. But I had cleaned the barrel pretty good. And so I figured that it would probably have some level of point of impact shift even after that shot. So I shot 4 more, and they dropped even further down and to the left, but they grouped right there, which that was a 1.274 inch group with factory ammo. Not bad. That's the Hornady 168 grain AMAX. So I made an adjustment up. I think I went 4 inches right, 5.5 inches up. Then I shot that Winchester group. That put me right there. Then I started with the Alpha munition stuff. 42.8, 43.1, 43.4, 43.7, these 3, and then 44. I started to see pressure up here. The primer started to crater. So not even going to fool with that. I'm just going to back it off. We're going to go with the 43.4 and call it done. Right. So that's what I did. Again, not even going to call it load development because it wasn't necessarily that. It was just super quick. I was hoping that the point of impact would be pretty consistent between all of the group, or all of the charges that I tried, and it was, which is great. That's all I wanted to see, and I wanted to see that it grouped halfway decent, good enough to go kill a deer in Alabama. So, right, basically good enough to kill a deer anywhere. Yeah, that's what we've got. So now I'm just gonna go. The die is still set up from where I seated the bullets yesterday, and now we just repeat the process. Get these loaded up and get them over to him, and he can go hunt this weekend. He's dialed in, ready to go. I did bring the scope up. I did bring it up roughly, let's see, what was it? I've got him now. I adjusted his scope up to where he'll be an inch high at 100. And so that way I told him, you just hold on the vitals, hold right behind the front shoulder, 200 yards, don't matter. 200 and in, you're good. So that's it. That is how it's done, expedited style. All right, that's it. That's all. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you are in the market for anything firearms related, reloading related, doesn't matter, go see Mr. Big Guns in Huntsville. Matt and those guys, they do a great job. Go check them out. That's where I'm going to leave it. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch you next time.